So today, the only item on the agenda is to talk about each of these pages that are under review. So we're going to just go one by one, and the first one is the Blu-ray and DVD combo packs. It looks like there's just this one issue that needs to be talked about on this page that's in green. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Is there anything else below it?
I don't see anything else that's highlighted.
Okay. Yeah. So since I did this, I'll start, and everybody jump in. The concept of addition in RDA is weird to me, and like they consider everything to be an addition, and I don't get it, but so
yeah, see the house.
So my question is, do we need to add that 250? And I'll follow that up by saying, if it really is an addition statement and we should be doing it, then it doesn't need to be in our manual. And if we don't really need it, because in the catalog, right next to the addition statement is the format, which says, does it say DVD and Blu-ray is a TOM, right? I forgot. Yes.
Okay, so Sandy wanted to see the note field. So we do also have in the note field the also issued as part of a Blu-ray and DVD combo pack, issued as part of a Blu-ray and DVD combo pack. So she would also like to talk about the note field. So it's potentially enough to just include Blu-ray and DVD combo pack in the note field and not as an addition statement.
And I'm asking, do we need to do this at all? We've kind of set it in the 300, and there's a TOM. Isn't that enough?
Well, I think it's enough, but I think the only reason why we did that before, you said with the Wonder Books and Vox, was because there was not a TOM, right?
That sounds right.
So it would make sense to, as long as there's a TOM, to not need the 250.
Right. And if it's there, you can leave it if you want to put it in. Right.
Sandy says that we can't rely on the TOM, and that if we ever migrate again, we may need that information somewhere else.
Yeah, you don't
Right.
want to make the system totally dependent on the system you're working on.
But we're making an exception for Wonder Books.
Could I just point out, this wasn't about supplying something that wasn't on the item. This is only if the words Blu-ray plus DVD combo pack appears on the container, then you would put it in the 250.
Oh.
This is transcribing. This is not about supplying something that's not there.
Okay, that was not clear to me. That's useful information. So then we really don't need to say it, do we? That's just cataloging.
Well, the statement doesn't have the word addition, so it's not necessarily clear that it is an addition statement. So I think it makes sense if it's on the actual container to say transcribe it as an addition statement if it appears on the container.
Right, I think this was kind of trying to clarify that if this phrase appeared on the item, we're going to consider it an addition statement, because I think you, John, and maybe some others had said at the time, well, that's not really an addition statement. So this was just us saying, let's consider it an addition statement.
Okay, I don't think that's clear the way it's written, but
okay. We can change it.
Sure.
Okay, I'll just make note to update that. I can go ahead and update that today. Is there anything else about this? Sandy wanted to talk about the 500 notes. Was there anything else, Sandy, that you wanted to mention about the 500 notes? Okay, well, she hasn't responded, so maybe we
Well,
should just,
I mean, are those two notes, is that important to either the public or the catalogers when we have UPCs? Wait, Sandy has replied.
right, so she said they don't make sense, and they both seem to say the same thing, but are supposedly used under different circumstances. They do seem to be used under different circumstances, like if the Blu-ray and DVD were separated, you could add a note that it was also issued as part of a Blu-ray and DVD combo pack. So, I mean, this could fall into the category of, just add notes as you want to add notes, and doesn't necessarily need to be here.
Right, and they don't display to the public, so.
Right. So I guess it does make sense to remove it from the page. Because people can just add notes at their own discretion anyway.
It's useful, add it, but I don't think we can account for every possibility.
So is everyone okay with the idea of removing the 500 from this page?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's an option that one can add if you feel it's important.
Okay. Is there anything else about this page that we need to discuss? Oh, here's another 250 edition statement.
Yeah, I saw that.
Generally do not supply an edition statement indicating format for a separated part from a combo pack. However, supply an edition statement indicating a format for which there is no Polaris Tom. So that makes sense, because there's the issue with the 4K Blu-ray.
Does that, go ahead.
Oh, I don't have anything else to say.
I thought, Jamie.
Okay.
Does that information that an item is a 3D or 4K Blu-ray, does that appear anywhere else in the record? 347, 300?
Yeah, I think it could appear in the 347. When I've looked at those records, they do have it in multiple places throughout the record.
Okay. So if the 347 displays in the catalog,
It's not in the hit list.
okay,
This is for the hit list because edition shows there and it'll have the format Blu-ray, but we want them to see in the hit list that it's not a regular Blu-ray, it's a 3D Blu-ray or the 4K.
I think it makes sense to keep it in the 250 so that it's visible in the brief view. So the 347 would not be in the brief view, right? Is that what you're saying, Jamie?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
it could be. Are we making a distinction? Generally do not display an edition statement indicating format separated from a combo pack. So I'm trying to flowchart these two sentences here. There must be combo packs that have a 3D Blu-ray and a 2D Blu-ray, right?
I don't know. I
I
haven't looked at 3D Blu-ray records often enough to know if the combo backs have them.
Yeah, and 3D is kind of dead, but 4K is still going. I don't know. I get the point of this. It's just one more thing that we have to add to a record when it already exists in the record.
Well, I think it makes sense to just leave it at for now.
Sure.
Can we move on to the next page? Okay, the next page, I talked to Deborah about it, and she was okay with just completely deleting it since we have information about previous technical group officers elsewhere.
CCS is saving this information?
Yeah, they have it elsewhere,
Okay.
but I'm not sure exactly where. I would have to ask Deborah about it.
Okay. As long as we can still find it somewhere, it's not that important. It's fun to look at, but it's on a public website and it's not really necessary. That's why I tagged it. And it's 4 years out of date.
Right. So I think this should just be deleted for now.
I mean, I kind of forgot about cluster 1 and cluster 2.
Encoding level 3 records. Is this even necessary to have? Because I would think that everyone would know that level 3 records are not needed as final records. I mean, are not allowed as final records.
You can use level 3 records as final records if you upgrade them.
Right.
Because, and this is maybe part of a different discussion, CCS has never discussed encoding levels locally. It's never been a concern to us. So.
Except the 3.
Well, right, but it's not, it's the level 3 part about it is that it's 3 lines, not that it's level 3. The encoding level has never meant anything to us locally. So technically this sentence is wrong.
Should we just expand on it to explain that they need to just change the encoding level to a higher encoding level?
I think that's open for discussion because when we talk about encoding levels, I'd be fine with deleting this page completely, but.
I think you could delete it.
Okay. Importing records from connection. So I think this is this one that's from the Searcy Dynex system that should just be deleted?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's in the category using workflows, so.
Yeah, it's not current.
And even if we were to update it, I think it should live in the learning portal.
Right, it looks really instructional and would be in the training documents. So we can delete that. Importing vendor preliminary data records. So this is Polaris and not workflows.
Why did I tag this? Mark records required of vendor.
There's something about pre-order titles. Don't we talk about that? Wasn't it?
Maybe. Oh. I think we. Some of this maybe belongs in the learning portal. Are we okay with, if possible, capitalize all letters in the 245 field? I mean, it should say the title. I don't know if, if you're capitalizing the statement of responsibility. And it's always possible. But I mean, it sounds like we're encouraging that, and I
thought it was just optional at this point.
Yeah, so maybe change if possible to optionally capitalize the title.
But we were encouraging all caps, not just optional. This is about vendor records, and
okay.
It should be very easy to set up all caps from your vendor.
Yep, okay.
And they stand out.
Wow, yeah.
So the section that says in Polaris and has the steps for importing it, that would be educational. Does that need to stay here, or can we remove that instead?
You could move it and link to it.
A link to a document?
Yeah.
Link to the learning portal.
Yeah, whatever. Sure, that's it.
Is there anything else from this page?
I don't see anything.
Okay, let's go on to the next page. Item extended information fields. This is from Symphony, or Suzy Dynamics. So this can be deleted? Or do we still want to retain it because of this note for historical purposes?
I feel like we retain historical information if it is retained in the database, like, I know 3 fields or something that someone might come across it and not know what it is. But if this is item information, did any of this transfer into weird, I mean, it's items, so it should be fine.
Polaris doesn't have these same fields like the ACQ note.
I would assume that if there was something at the time of migration, if there was something that there was a transfer to the appropriate new field, much like the number of pieces notes that went to the free text and so forth. So I don't see a reason to keep this.
Yeah, since we migrated 2 years ago, this information, yeah.
More than 2 now.
Is it more than 2 now? Sure, I'm having fun.
Yeah, we're coming up on 2.
Yeah, so then we're 2.5.
I think it makes sense to delete this one then.
Yes.
Okay, next is Leapfrog Kits.
Ooh.
Okay, I don't see anything highlighted specifically on this page. Do we need to review the whole page?
Why did maybe this is more for the learning portal? I don't immediately see.
It talks about workflows for one thing.
Yeah, if editing and workflows, that's probably what I saw. I try not to think about Leapfrog Kits, so I probably didn't get any farther than that.
So I need to just remove any references to workflows, and then this should be fine then.
Well, there was a thing down there about juvenile software in the 650s.
We don't do that.
To,
Yeah, we can.
qualify subject headings with juvenile software. Is that, do we need to say that? Is that what we're doing?
Usually we're doing juvenile software instead of juvenile, what is it? Multimedia, whatever it is. But I haven't fixed any of those records for a long time. There's been other things in my more pressing matters.
And, you know, do we need, I'm kind of remembering here now, do we really need to explicitly explain the 521 field, for example?
It should be elsewhere, wouldn't it be?
I mean, that's kind of basic.
We could probably remove all the 500 fields that are all notes.
Yeah. If is there anything in any of those notes that is unique to CCS? Do include series information such as the above and beyond something. I don't know what that is. Above and beyond series. Is the above and beyond series something special?
I don't.
Is the variable fields, is that not in, is this different than the information we have listed for the toms? Is that why that's here?
This page was written before Polaris, so
Right.
no.
Well, I'm just questioning, I mean, variable fields is also sort of standard cataloging unless this is specifically a CCS issue to make something show correctly.
Right.
We don't have these anymore. I haven't looked at Leapfrog Kits in ages, so.
Yeah, I haven't either.
What is a Leapfrog Kit? I've never seen one before.
It's a book with a pen, a couple different styles of pens that you read along in the book with. And the story gets downloaded to the pen, something like that.
That sounds impossible.
Technology.
This is older technology, actually.
Yeah. Do we still have any? Are there still Leapfrog? There must be Leapfrogs in the catalog, in our database.
So is the question about this page, I mean, is there anything here that, as somebody said this specifically CCS, or is this just how to catalog a Leapfrog kit? I guess that's.
It looks more like how to catalog the Leapfrog Kit, but people may be confused about what it actually is if they haven't really seen a lot of them. And might not get the right 07 feel. So I would think leaving in the 06 and 07 would be fine. But I don't know if you necessarily need the 300 fields to be in here, unless it seems like no one knows how to describe it.
Usage note, include a note about the nature and intended usage of the item. Add title from cartridge label as needed. This is a lot of effort for.
I was just looking in the catalog under, with Leapfrog, because we still have some DVDs and we have put out by Leapfrog. and they have a quote unquote video game kind of thing, but it is actually kind of an interesting question as to whether there are any actual kits left. So maybe we should double check that.
If there aren't any, we could just ignore it, I guess.
You could just delete it if there's nothing else. Because it's kind of I think it's an older technology too.
Algonquin has a STEM kit with a LeapPad 3 in it, but that's a kit that they have. Yeah, Algonquin has a few, it looks like.
But is it like a local record?
Yeah, I mean, the way the 245 is done, yeah, Algonquin Early Learning Kit.
Yeah, so it's probably not even an OCLC record.
Right.
Yeah, so they can do what they want.
Yep. Can we ask it CAM next week?
Yeah, we should check in with everyone and see if anyone else has them and if there's even a need for this page anymore.
Yeah, I'm seeing games, DVDs, but not much else. Not that this is an exhaustive search.
All right, let's move on to the next issue. So the Lexile page came up at the previous meeting, and I had updated the section on correcting the OCLC copy because we do need the subfield B, but we don't have to remove the L anymore. So are there any other changes that need to be made to this page? So there's no other changes. I think we can just remove this part at the top that's green and keep it as is.
Okay.
So next is a literary form page. And one thing that came up was if we should still have these images on the page because that's more educational. But we do have this DBM statement at the top from 2018.
Yes, that's important. I think I was more concerned about the screenshot from the client. I think this came up in an email. It's technically proprietary software. It's on a public website. I don't know that we need to make screenshots of everything. This could be simplified to, I don't even remember what did we decide?
I think we could just remove the screenshots and let the text speak for itself because there's plenty of other ways to provide training on using the software besides the wiki.
In that third bullet point, it is recommended that novels should be coded for 1 instead of F. Why is that?
I think that's how the facets work.
Right.
But it does display novels, so I don't know. I'm not sure why they decided that.
When we talked about it before, I think the general thought was users would search for fiction.
Mm-hmm.
They click on fiction before they clicked on novels. I don't know. It just seemed differently.
I'd like to send that back to the catalogers. I don't think that's a good plan.
What's not a good plan, having it listed as recommended and not saying one or the other, or what?
The novels.
I don't think we should be making that change. It's valid data, and it's unlike some other facets, it's very clear what a novel is.
Right. I was trying to clarify what you were suggesting, that this
Yeah.
just be removed and you could use 1 and F as you chose to catalog. Is that?
Yeah, I think we should follow national practice. Use the most specific value, most accurate, whatever it's.
You're saying you would want us to use F instead of 1, or
Yes.
are you saying either?
Well, ideally, it should be, you should use fiction for fiction. But if everybody, yeah, I understand in the chat, you're splitting things, but fiction could be
Yeah, exactly.
a 30-page learn to read thing. Novels is a thing. It's a genre heading, just like short stories. I mean, we're splitting short stories out from fiction. Why aren't we splitting out novels? I mean, in this case, the facet is actually working correctly. Unlike, well, I mean, the audience facet is working correctly, but it's confusing.
So is this something that we need to continue at the next scrap meeting or just bring up at CAM?
Either way.
All right. So is everyone okay with removing these images from the page?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's move on to the next page, map and atlas cataloging. So this one is still AACR2 and hasn't been rewritten for RDA. So maybe we should leave this for another time and I can review it while I'm working on updating the RDA numbers and see what I can do to update this for RDA.
Before you spend time on that, do we need to keep this page? It's probably standard stuff.
And it's really in the weeds, and
There's,
assigning a proper genre heading to your maps I think is more important than all of this. And we shouldn't have a list of genre headings that's incomplete. And we already have, the list is already on the other page, so. I vote to launch it.
Launch it.
Into space. And then we can get a celestial atlas. And
Will the 07 field affect Tom's if has like highway map or atlas or something else? Will it show a different image? Or will it all be like a cartographic image depending on?
yeah, I don't think there are that many Toms. We actually do have individual state maps, you know, that fold out and then you can't put back together again. But most of it is atlases.
the other people have maps too. Other libraries do too.
Yeah, the atlas icon is it's a book with a compass rose in the center of it. And then there's generic cartographic material, which is just the compass with no book. So I guess, I don't know about map.
If
Oh,
that,
yeah. There is a map as well,
okay.
which is, again, the icon is like, it looks like an actual map. So there are distinct map, atlas, and generic cartographic material, depending on how they're coded.
Presumably, if we code them correctly, they will display correctly.
Right. So do you think it would be worth just keeping the a note about the 007 so that they understand to code it properly for the Tom?
Yeah, I think there's at least 5 ways you can code it, so it's worth mentioning that it does matter how it affects the icons, basically.
Okay.
And I saw the word workflows in here somewhere.
Right. Does the 008 have any bearing on the Tom for the maps and atlases because of the various different fields for like relief and projection and type of map?
I suspect it's not Polaris specific. I'm going to guess that that's just Atlas cataloging now.
Probably. Okay, so I think it sounds like the only thing that we really need to keep is the 007 and a note about the genre.
You don't even need that. That's
No.
just standard cataloging.
Okay. So we'll just keep the 007 field then. But update it for Polaris. Okay, so I added this just yesterday, so I don't know if you want to actually review it today again on merging duplicate records or put it off till the next scrap meeting. Should we talk about it at the next scrap meeting? Okay, so let's move on to multi-volume call numbers. There was one thing that was highlighted here that was on the months and seasons. I don't think there's anything else on this page that's specifically highlighted.
Yeah, that's a workflows issue, the way they abbreviate months.
I could conceive of this still being an issue for those that don't use the serials module yet. There are a number of libraries that still just use item records.
Well, they should then match the way Polaris abbreviates, which do they spell out the, I don't think they abbreviate.
It does use abbreviations, I believe. But it has the periods instead. So I think it just needs to be updated with the periods for the month, except for May, June, and July, and no periods for the season.
And it does not, yeah.
Oh, the capitalization. This says they should be abbreviated, all capitalized.
Right. And for weeklies, for some reason, Polaris does not add a comma between the date and the year, which I just laugh at because people always want to put a comma between the month and the year when you don't need it. But when you do actually need it between two numbers, they don't add it.
Okay, so I will go ahead and update this so that it matches the Polaris instructions on the other page.
I did not look at any other part of that page, so I don't know. It might be fine. I just stopped there. Lost parts. Oh, yeah, okay.
Do we even need this section on audio visual materials?
Set is still important. I don't know if it says it anywhere else on the page. Although that's not unique to AV.
Okay, well, if you do see anything else, feel free to let us know. We can move on to this retention statements for periodical holdings. I wasn't sure what needed to be reviewed on this page other than maybe it still lists workflows somewhere or it was used for workflows.
Oh,
Oh, we don't have these 866 fields anymore, do we?
right.
I've seen some retention statements in item records.
It's very, very confusing to have retention statements in Polaris. I find it very confusing, and so I kind of haven't bothered, but we only keep a year of anything anyway.
And some do put a retention statement in the serial holdings record in a note field. Should we change this to have the specific note field for the serial holdings record and keep it, or just completely delete this page?
It could certainly be simplified. Like I said, I've kind of given up on serial holdings, so I don't really have a strong feeling either way. Does this data, when it was in CIRCE, got sent to OCLC? To answer Sandy's questions, those 866s were library specific.
Library, yeah.
An extra
Had a
table.
little- had a little code or something. It's which library was it?
So, but all this information about these 866, we don't use those, right?
You can if you want to, if you can figure out how it works.
I think this is just a note in the serial holdings record. It's not, we don't have MARC holdings records or anything like that.
So how about I do some more research into retention statements in the serial holdings record and try to figure out how this should be updated for the next meeting. And we can move on to the next one so we don't take too much time on that.
Rachel, could we go back to multi-volume column number?
Sure.
So I think this page or that section is about not magazines. Like something that the only thing I can think of right now is the original new car cost guide, which I just got the other day. And it like an issue will be September, October 2020. And I've been doing all caps SEP/OCT 2020, and I think that's what everybody else is doing. So I'm not sure this section needs to be changed if it's stuff that we're only using item records for. Like we're not checking in things via serials.
But if a library did check it in, wouldn't that cause a problem?
Well, it's already going to cause a problem anyway, because for those that check it in,
Right.
it shows up in the designation, and for those that use item records, it's in the volume field, so they're already two separate
Right.
tracks anyway. But
Yeah.
this, again, this is for things that nobody is checking in.
Right, that's the, yeah, you're right, that's the first bullet point, right? They only apply to titles not checked in using serials work form.
Right. I can't think of anything else right off, but I'm sure there are other things that are serials, but that nobody checks in. And so in the item record, we are using all caps because that's what we've always been doing for those.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that this does not need to be updated at all. And it makes sense to just stick with this current practice. But it looks like what does need to be updated is just this statement that says serials work form, since we're not using workflows anymore to say like serials check-in record or something like that. Or to state that it's not that it doesn't have a serials holding record.
I'm not sure what needs to be changed here, but that's just me, I guess.
Well, the fact that now that check-in and item records don't work together anyway, then there is no reason to change the practice. They don't
Right.
need to match anymore. So yeah, I didn't realize that. So other than wording, it's fine.
Okay.
And even the wording would be fine, I don't know.
Got it. So I can just update this wording of this first statement so that it's Polaris related. So next is the scrap committee members. And I talked to Deborah about this and she said she'd be okay with deleting it since we have this information elsewhere and it's not up to date. Is everyone okay with deleting this? Yes.
Yes.
Parallel timer. Interesting.
Yeah. Tony was my boss for 3 months.
Software, computer games, and video games. There's nothing specifically highlighted on this page.
Yeah, Tony lasted like 3 months at Displays and then moved on to Swan or something, I think. I don't know. I think
Yeah, he
he's
went to
still there.
Swan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he went to Northbrook. He was like the assistant director or something. Anyway, there's a list of platforms at the bottom. Is it up to date? There's PlayStation 5, right?
So should we try to solicit from other members on the CAS list or other platforms to add?
We could Bob could certainly run a report.
Or run a report? Okay.
Trying to remember why I tagged this. Certainly that. 655, yeah, that's good. There's probably too much on here. Does the 520 need to be explicitly stated? System requirements. Okay. Like 33X, yeah, that's for every format. We don't really need to say that. The 300 field, that's national practice. That's
It looks like these standard numbers are also just national practice and aren't necessary for the 028 and 037. Should that be removed too?
unless there is some difference between 028 and 037.
Well, it looks like the 037 would be like a stock number, like if it had a number from a specific store that it was bought from.
Okay.
But libraries could buy the games from multiple different stores.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if they need the stock number unless it was a local record.
Yeah, if it has a UPC, we're going to be scanning it. So I don't know. The 007 is probably national practice.
Would it conceivably be a problem if it wasn't added though because of the TOM, that maybe we should keep the 007 as a reminder?
That's true of any format that needs an 007, I guess. I don't do a lot of software, so.
It looks like we do need this 028 though, because it has this note that says disregard the Oclc recommendation to record platform numbers in 024. So this is probably a local practice and not necessarily a national practice.
I don't know what a platform number is, but we don't need to.
So I think we should keep that, but remove the 037.
Yeah.
Does anyone know why we chose to disregard the OLAC recommendation?
I know what their recommendation is. Oh, that we do, yes. But why?
I mean, if the OLAC recommendation is to record it in 024, does that mean when the records are coming in, we're taking it out of the 024 and swapping it over to the 028? I mean, is that really happening?
I've never done that.
And why would we? I mean, most of the records I mean, for myself, it's not like we're getting specialty items. I mean, we're bringing in records, and I'm sure most catalogers are cataloging these with OLAC recommendations. I mean, they're the Can we, is this something we could ask at CAM? Because there are people who have much more knowledge about, well, first off, the history than I do, and secondly, about specific video game stuff. I mean, maybe somebody would remember why this was an issue at one time.
I think that's a good idea.
Mhm.
If no one
And so-
remembers, I would vote to say, let's go with Oclc, but.
And at some level, does it really matter whether it's in the 028, 037, or 024? It kind of all indexes more or less the same, and I don't know how important those numbers are. I don't think a patron's ever going to come in looking for RVL, RMKE, USA, BO.
I do use them when I'm trying to match up what I have in hand. I mean, so I do find them helpful, but yeah. I mean, they are. So I guess maybe we come back to this after we bring this up at CAM.
Sure. Sort order of marked fields is next. So this was approved in 2018. And
Yep.
I was just thinking that the one thing that would need to be removed would be the image.
Yes, mhm. It changes too. We've changed it. We've added things since then, so it's not current.
I think the whole page can go because it's not really that important, and you can see the order of the fields in the client.
Right.
As long as CCS has this, and you can just dial it up and look at it if you need to make a change. I don't think this is important.
Okay.
It's in the client. I mean, it's in our client.
Yeah.
Next is target audience. So this is the other issue with the images that can be removed. Is everyone okay with removing these images?
Yes, that's fine.
Is there anything else about this page that we need to discuss?
I don't think I looked at any other part of it besides the screenshot. I remember this discussion.
Okay. Uniform titles.
Well, it needs to be renamed. And I don't know what is local here.
This looks like national practice to me.
If there's anything, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying this category is national practice, but there's something that must be local practice because it is tagged as local practices somewhere. I mean, on here. So there's something on here that's different, but I'm not sure what it is.
Is it something about operas? Like main entry for operas or something?
Yes, it's like music.
Yeah, I mean, we have a separate page for putting Beatles, you know, as a 100, 110, possibly something under fairy tales. Translation. I mean, that was adaptations was always a sticking point, especially with youth librarians.
here's fairy tales.
Traditions.
You're talking about AACR2 though.
Yeah.
Sure. Remember exactly. I'm sure it's changed.
I don't remember us ever having big discussions about fairy tales. I know whether or not to put it under Grimm is confusing, but the authority file probably takes care of most of those.
Yeah, some of the local ones with individual, like, I don't know. Some of them are taken care of and some have been done locally over the years, just so that they authorize correctly.
Oh.
So that there was a local practice about the 730 subfield L for English.
So it would be a translation type thing. Especially with the Grimm family.
So are you thinking that we should remove any national practices from the catalog wiki, or do you still want to maintain them in the catalog wiki?
A case could be made that recording national practice is something for the learning portal. I'm thoroughly confused by this page. I don't remember there was a 690 reference there for bilingual.
Should we come back to this another time and just take some more time to read through it?
Sure.
That's a good idea. Future scrap meeting.
Uniform titles for motion pictures. So this one just says national practice. It doesn't say that there's a local practice on here. Should we come back to this later with the other local practice page? Or is there something you wanted to discuss about it?
Well, I mean, they're not called uniform titles anymore. That's why I tagged it, but I don't see a reason for this page.
It's more just normal stuff, what to do, yeah.
And I don't know if even RDA has settled on uniform titles for movies. It's kind of all over the place, or at least the catalogers haven't settled. Because originally it was add one for every movie, and then it was no, go back to this, and there was a complicated rule in ACR well, it was an LCRI, and I don't know if it transferred over about when to qualify and all of that. It seems like everybody just always puts motion picture, even when technically you don't always need to, and I think the ship has sailed on that. So, and Polaris doesn't really handle 130s and 730s very well, so because their attempt at Ferber kind of overrides that.
Is everyone okay with deleting this page?
if there's nothing specifically local, I mean, there's certainly plenty of places to find this information.
Right. So that sounds good. So the next one is the Wonder Books and Fox, which we talked about last week and we talked about at camp. So the only issue is the addition statement that we already talked about. And I don't think we need to review that again since it will be on the CAM agenda. So I think that's it. Is there anything else that anyone else wanted to talk about regarding the catalog wiki?
Yes. Could we add in the local practices the thing about the extra 006 for periodicals and newspapers? And also the thing about in the leader using M instead of S for serials.
So let's see. Can you repeat that? I didn't catch what you said for the first part while I was changing pages.
Yeah, I think it's the last sentence in the cataloging serials section. Bib records for magazines and newspapers should have the Tom periodical or newspaper, so we need an 006 with S. So that seems fine to me here, but could we also add it on the local practices summary page? And
Oh, okay, got it. Sure, I can add that later today.
Okay, and then also kind of same thing for the thing about non-magazine serials. Instead of S, they need to have M in the leader.
Right, I didn't add that yet because I knew that was still going to be on the agenda to discuss at CAM. Because you were interested in changing that practice.
Maybe, but I mean, if that is our current practice, but we can wait if everybody wants to do that.
I think we should wait to see where the discussion goes at CAM.
Okay. Also on this page, though, in the middle of that same section, it says libraries that use Mark Holdings records to convey standing order information. I don't think we use Mark Holdings records, right?
Right.
No.
Maybe
No.
take out that sentence.
Okay, is there anything else? Well, if there's nothing else, I think we can adjourn the meeting. And I will send out the minutes of the meeting when I get back to my apartment, and we'll work on some of these changes today and tomorrow.
Once you adjourn the meeting, would anybody want to stay on and talk about encoding levels?
We could do that.
Well, I'm confused. I didn't know that, Sandy's asking in what context, and I did not know that encoding levels was an option until it was brought up a couple weeks ago. And if I understand correctly, vendor records are potentially overlaying records that CCS catalogers have
Right,
finalized, and that can't happen.
but it happened.
Right. In my opinion, we need to stop that. I don't think a vendor record should ever overlay anything except another vendor record. And we can, we can look at encoding levels, but if we can't control the encoding levels of the vendor records, the system won't work. And I sent out that spreadsheet where they're just all over the place. There isn't even a correlation between MARC format. So.
It did sound like Brad has been happy with changing his encoding level to I so far. He hasn't noticed any of his work being overlaid by the vendor cataloged records.
And there's Brett.
Okay. I is going away, but
Right.
now, yes. But there's that table in that document that Rachel sent out about what overlays what. And is I the level that is least likely to be overlaid?
Well, the full level encoding level for the future will only be blank. So I think everyone could start using blank instead of I.
Right. But and you could double check this, but I believe it says in that document that blank vendor records will overlay blank MARC records.
If their import profile says to overlay, the same encoding level, then yes, it will overlay
Okay.
the encoding level. But what Evanston and others are currently using says if the encoding levels match, do not overlay. So
Okay.
their blank would not overlay an I or a blank.
But if they're,
That's the
for
problem.
example, if their vendor records were blank, then they'd be overlaying Brad's I records.
No,
Right.
no, because the levels would match. It's full level, blank is full level, I is full level. So if the vendor sends a blank full level, it will not overlay an I full level because the import profile setting says if the encoding levels match, do not overlay.
Okay. And we're sure that blank and I are considered matches.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
it's full level. They're both equal. And I did try it in the training server and it did not overlay. The
Good.
blank did not overlay an I or vice versa, whatever I did.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So for this to work, all of the catalogers need to change all of their records to I or blank.
All the ones who are concerned about their records being overlaid would need to do that, yeah.
And that theoretically is everyone.
I don't know about that, but probably a few of us, yeah.
I mean, particularly if you've spent time upgrading locally a record, I would assume. On the other hand, I'm sure there's folks where for some materials, they're accepting what's there and they're not really touching it, and they may not even think to do that, but that's.
It seems like, I mean, yes, the local practices macro can do that, and I can send out an update. There's no harm in doing it anyway. That doesn't account for all the records that are already in the database. If some library gets, the first Harry Potter novel, is it going to overlay, is their vendor record going to overlay our final OCLC record?
One problem with updating the local practice macro is that there are some libraries that don't have professional level catalogers. They only have library assistants doing copy cataloging. And if they're using the local practice macro, I wouldn't want them to also change the encoding level to full level, because that records could still be reviewed by a librarian at another library and corrected.
I don't want to be dramatic here, but it seems like the burden is being placed on the catalogers who are actually cataloging.
Well, they're the ones that are trying to like review the subject headings and make sure that everything is correct in terms of the authorized headings, but the library assistants doing the cataloging wouldn't necessarily check that.
Are those library assistants removing preliminary data from the record then?
They are, but they would just be copy cataloging existing records and not necessarily, they're not creating new original records, and they wouldn't be like updating a level 3 record. They would say wait until another library updates it.
Mm-hmm.
So then these would have to be changed in basically individually or by hand or whatever.
Right. Well, potentially a better record could come in from a vendor.
Does that usually happen? I mean,
It could.
And are vendors reading our manual and changing large type books to 655 and all the things we discussed today? And
They're supposed to follow our practices, but I have not reviewed anyone's standard account procedures to see what it actually says.
That might be a good question when we discuss it at CAM next week. You could find out from some of the libraries who do use vendor cataloging what their communication's like about our local practices.
I guess we could ask those libraries to provide us with their standard account procedures to review them to see what they look like, to see if they'd be willing to do that. But would we want to just email them privately and not talk to everyone at CAM about it?
Yeah, that might be a little more, not put them on the spotlight or something. It's only really a couple, isn't it?
I think it would, go ahead.
I think it's just Evanston and Indian Trails.
Algonquin does it somewhat.
No,
I think
Algonquin
fiction.
doesn't. Algonquin stopped. They're not
Oh, they did, okay.
vendor catalog records anymore.
I think it should certainly be made known to the catalogers that this practice is going on, because I didn't know.
The practice of getting records from the vendor?
I didn't know that they were overlaying final OCLC records.
Well, and I'm still not 100% clear on this point either. My understanding is when the vendor sends the records, they are OCLC records.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Right. So I am sensing there's confusion on that point, because it seems like John and probably others are picturing them sending not non-OCLC records that are just from the vendor, however, whatever they wanted to put in there. but they're taking the actual OCLC record and sending it to the library. So the library doesn't have to do that, but it's still an OCLC record.
Okay, you're right. That was not clear to me, because to me, a vendor record is a record created by a vendor.
Right. Okay.
But isn't the issue that, and I think with Brad this came up, that he's editing and updating those records only in Polaris and not in OCLC. So if he's added local practices to a record and an OCLC record comes in, he's lost that work. I thought that was the ultimate issue.
That's correct, but if he, as long as he changes the encoding level, then
Yes.
it's not overlay. Yep.
Right, yeah. No, I knew that it was an OCLC record coming in. It's just that that work wasn't included in afterwards because it wasn't done for, valid reasons, wasn't done in OCLC.
So let me walk through this again, because I'm still trying to get a workflow here. So I'm thinking about the other cataloger at Displays, who does not use connection. She does Z3950. And so she would have, if she brought in a record, she would have to make sure that the record in OCLC would be an I or a blank in order to protect her work.
It has to be I or blank in Polaris.
Right, okay, so, right, she can't change it in connection. So she does a Z3950, she brings in the record, then she has to look in the leader and make sure that that's an I or blank.
If you don't want the vendor's record to overlay it.
Right. That's
Possibility of it.
That's expecting a lot from.
But if your person brought in a minimal level like K, and then the vendor tried to send in a later upgraded blank, why wouldn't you want it to overlay the minimal?
Do you mean K? I don't see very many K records anymore, but are you,
Minimal.
when you say K, do you mean like it's like level 3? Because she doesn't bring in on order records. She's bringing stuff in to finalize it.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe in that rare instance, but
Are you confusing, though, the acquisitions process with the cataloging process? Because vendor records are being used during the acquisitions and the on-order process.
right, probably because
Are we talking about the records for Evanston and Indian Trails? Yeah, I'm confusing myself.
Okay, well, I don't know what these records look like. I don't know how to identify an Evanston or Indian Trails record. And I don't know if
records look like any OCLC record. The only way you'd be able to tell which ones came from Baker and Taylor's cataloging department is actually from the file name. Well, I don't know about Evanston's, but I know the ones from Indian Trails start with MOM, and those are the ones that come from Baker and Taylor.
And where does it say, Mom?
It's in the I don't remember what it's called. I'd have to look at it. It's in the, if you go to the top of a bibliographic record, I can show you. I don't remember the name of the category off the top of my head. One second.
Is it like the properties thing?
Oh, yeah, that's what it is, properties. I was thinking it was profile, but it's not.
Export, import profile, you see moms in the import profiles. Like if you're in the import queue, you see mom, you see some, shows you what the file's going in is, and you see moms there.
Right, but if you're in an actual record, it's,
in the
yeah, it's
top.
properties. It's this
Okay.
image right here. And then if you click on about, you
Yeah.
can see this import file. So if
Okay.
that begins with MOM, that was the last record that was imported. That would come from Moments
Right.
and their cataloging department.
I
And Sandy
don't,
says it's also in the 949.
I don't know how important this is. I'm just covering my bases since we're all here. But could that be in a more prominent place? Now we're clicking on things and, you know, could that be regularly added to an something, to a local field? My concern is they're getting overlaid and we have no way to find them. And it's becoming a burden on the libraries that actually, I don't want to make this is not personal, but we catalog and we check our work. And I'm not clear if these vendor records, Sandy, are you checking these records once they come in? Okay, all right, so that's fine. I'm okay with this. As long as you are looking at the records, that's fine, I don't care. I trust you, I don't trust Baker and Taylor.
But Evanston doesn't check every record because the amount of records they're coming in and the amount of staff they have. They check just once in a while, you know, just check.
Which is exactly the same as displaying, both in staff and budget, but okay.
So essentially what the workflow is at Baker and Taylor is that the list of records that need to be cataloged are given to a copy cataloger who reviews it and updates it according to certain specifications. So a library might have like a specification in their account profile to add subfield Q to the 020 if it's missing. Basic things like that. The specific copy cataloger would also upgrade the CIP records. And they'll check to see if there are subject headings missing or authorized headings missing. If they are, it will go to a cataloger. But that's only if something's missing. So the librarian level cataloger only reviews it if it's absolutely necessary. But the majority of the records have already been completed according to what the level of work that a librarian level cataloger would do. So they would also add in things like information related to labels, like the prefix, if the librarian is having shelf-ready cataloging so that the labels can be printed from those records. And then that would then get sent to, say, the book would get sent to book processing, where book processing would then print the labels and put it on, and would have like all the other spine labels, like dots that are multicolored to put on it and things like that. They might even have the barcodes and so forth that they put on it before it gets sent to the library. So the majority does just get looked at by a copy cataloger because the librarian has already completed the steps for adding authorized headings and subject headings. But then that gets sent to the library after the copy cataloger does what they're supposed to do. So, but I think Brad's suggestion seems to be working, and that as long as the import profile is set to the one that rejects the record, that's the equal encoding level, and that everyone changes their encoding level to blank or I, then it shouldn't be overlaid and should work out okay.
Rachel, could you bring up just any bib record in the client there? It doesn't matter. Where is the encoding level?
You double click on the leader, and the encoding level is position 17.
Okay.
So blank is the equivalent of this one that says full level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one that everyone will be using in the future in OCLC. And they'll be eliminating I. And I think the other one that they'll be keeping in the future is 7 for minimal level.
Right, instead of K probably.
So all of these extra ones will be removed.
Okay, so catalogers that only do Z3950 are going to have to do this step if they want to protect their records.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a burden on the libraries that are actually cataloging, but okay. What does, where does 8 fit into this?
Level 8 is the CIP record level, which is a pre-publication level. So those come in pretty much completed to a full level except for the 300 field because it's pre-publication. So the only thing that really needs to be completed is to add in the 300 field details and just verify that the subject headings are correct and the classification is correct. Sometimes the title is wrong pre-publication, so that needs to be corrected.
Authorized heading is different too.
So when vendors upgrade pre-publication level records, what they do is to change the record status to P for increase in encoding level from pre-publication, and then change the 8 to a blank. But I don't think it's necessary to really change it to a P. The C is fine. So is there anything else on this topic? Any other questions? So Sandy said it seems like it's the kind of thing that should be in the wiki. So I do have it on my list of pages to create for a wiki. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And it seems like we are still trying to discuss the topic. But after the discussion at CAM, I could do it before or after the discussion at CAM. If you think I should put up a draft page before the meeting or should do it after.
I guess the benefit to the draft page would be that everybody would be reacting to the same information. I mean, it's obviously confusing, and the information you would put on the draft page, whether it's accepted or not, at least would be fully accurate.
Right. Okay, I can work on adding that page before the meeting. Are there any other topics that we should discuss? Well, I think everyone is ready to adjourn the meeting. And I will get the meeting notes and make the recording available as soon as I can.
Thanks for staying, everyone.
Sure.